Hello, I'm here with Theo. Theo and I are reading. We have been reading. We've been reading On the Cusp of Contact by Jean Barman. Well, to be honest, I'm the one who's been doing. Here, let's get where we actually have the sun. I'm the one who's been doing the reading of On the Cusp of Contact, where I am deep into a chapter. I'm not quite sure why I picked up the phone. I decided to pick up the phone because I wanted to record Theo being all cute in my lap. He's been just sitting here reading, probably getting steadily warmer and warmer. It's chapter number 5, Taming Indigenous Sexuality, Gender, Power, and Race in British Columbia in 1850 to 1900, which is definitely all about patriarchy, really trying to control Indigenous women, and using the well-worn technique of they're being immoral, they're being corrupted, they're prostituting themselves, basically classifying any activity, independent activity that Native women are doing as prostitution. All framed as at the start by Barman talking about how she sat in for. Did she sit in for? Listened in a Vancouver courtroom as Catholic Bishop Hubert O'Connor defended himself against charges of having raped or indecently assaulted 4 Indigenous young women 3 decades earlier. And he said, and his assertion of ignorance when asked what one of the complainants had been wearing on the grounds, "As you know, I'm a celibate man," and he admitted sexual relations to 2 of the women, but the inference was clear. They'd made him do it, and basically that they had dragged him down, led him astray. They had the temptation exercised by their sexuality was far too great for any mere man, even a priest and a residential school principal, to resist, which is just so disgusting. And yet, Barman does a masterful job of showing how Hubert O'Connor is not alone, that these attitudes, this is the direct result of a society where how the narrative of how Indigenous women have been cast, are continuing to be cast as, indecent, morally depraved, all this stuff. It's really interesting at the moment because we're in a section where there's how Indigenous men and the missionaries at the time kind of colluded together to try and form all these petitions to corral women, Indigenous women, to force them back to the reservations. It's just it's one of these, it's like one of these nasty things of unfortunately seeing of how people in power will use other people to oppress other people in a system, and indeed seems to be what was the case at that time. Even though we have they decided to canvass the Indian agents, the federal government officials that are actually on the reservations, and saying we don't actually see any evidence of this stuff, but no, it was still too good of a narrative to let go, and the petitions continued with the support, instigation of oblate priests, of Protestant ministers, to try and force women back onto the reservation. Tales in here of a priest and a couple of Indigenous men getting arrested, fined for grabbing an Indigenous woman and flogging her. Though there was a note saying that the Indigenous men shouldn't get as much time because they were basically under the impression that the priest had the authority to do this, and that they were just obeying the authority figure here, and so that it should really fall on the priest. And apparently this may have curtailed things, because it was quite a shock to Native people, like, oh shit, the priests aren't the final word of things, that he actually gets falls under state authority that way. But there's also the federal response being like, well, actually, Indian agents already control Indigenous women and Indigenous men, and indeed, if anyone in the position of authority, i.e., father, elder, chief, came to the Indian agent and said, "I don't want her to leave," they would just do it that way. So, it's definitely one of these. It's definitely one of these things where what is what. The sexualization of Indigenous women had far less to do with reality than with the needs and desires of men in power. As long as settler society perceived a need to tame Indigenous sexuality, men in power could refashion Indigenous society with impunity, which is what the Indigenous, what the Indian agents' role was, but also obviously the priests, the fucking. Oh God, you think of someone like Hubert O'Connor, back in that day doing it, much less, he committed his crimes, the ones that he was convicted of in the 60s. Someone who died with his titles, those never got revoked from him. He resigned as the bishop of Williams Lake, I believe, which I know well of, because Ja spent kind of last part of her high school life in Williams Lake, and they talk about the healing circle that O'Connor was sent to at the request of the victim of that particular crime, and had to participate in the healing circle, actually listen to his victim, kind of talk to him about what he did to her. He never ever admitted that what he had done is wrong. He insisted until the day he died in 2007 that it was consensual. That it was consensual. That this it was an 18-year-old who was his secretary, had been his student under him, had consented to the sex that he had done. He's gotten charged with other stuff where it's very fucking obvious the guy is a fucking rapist. Was a rapist who used his power to prey upon the least powerful in society. Which, yeah, social Darwinism at its best. It's the ones on top get to prey on those down below. I don't know if that's actually the lesson that was supposed to be for social Darwinism, but it does seem to be the one that is more and more apparent to us nowadays. So yeah, that's a rant. Theo's probably ready to get down because he's panting away here. He's not used to the all my warm heat radiating into him. I just figured I would stop and just talk about that. I guess that's what I wanted to talk about as a check-in with the first half of this chapter of On the Cusp of Contact. A really good, really good essay by Jean Barman, really illuminating about power structures, and not one that's liable to make me feel any better about religion. Of there's a live and let live attitude, I think, for the most part, I have about religion, but it's like, oh, and how far back? You don't have to go too far back to see exactly what kind of fucking malign influence this had over society, and how much control and power was given into the hands of people who should not have had it, and attracted people who wanted that power for their own fucking horrible reasons. All right, I will leave it there. Theo says ciao. Right, Theo? Yeah. Okay. More videos later.